March, when the quarantine hit, I left my college campus and returned home to my parents' house. There was no point in staying at school since all classes had been switched to virtual and the dining halls were closed. After a few weeks in quarantine, I started to miss my sorority sisters. In our group chat, I suggested that we do a Zoom happy hour the upcoming Friday so we could catch up, laugh, and pretend we were all back at school all together. Everyone was on board, and all week I looked forward to being able to see my friends again, even if it was just through the computer. When the day arrived, I put the Zoom code in the group chat and started the session. Everyone began to slowly arrive, their faces popping up on the screen. Once everyone had joined, we raised our drinks in the air to do a virtual cheers. We then jumped into excited chatter, discussing everything that had happened in our lives since we had to leave the campus. We were having a great time and just goofing around. After about an hour, my friend Taylor ran out of wine and had to run downstairs to the kitchen to grab some more. She jumped up from her desk, leaving her computer open with the camera still on. We all continued with our conversation, and I listened as one of my sorority sisters told us about a new guy she's been texting. As she analyzed the messages he'd sent her, I happened to glance up at Taylor's video. She hadn't gotten back yet from getting more drinks, but I noticed that something was moving inside of her bedroom. To my horror, I saw a dark, hooded figure slowly climb out from under her bed and sit down on the floor facing the computer. I quickly typed a message into the Zoom chat, telling them to look at Taylor's video. We were all terrified and had no idea what to do. There was an intruder in Taylor's bedroom, and she was going to be back any second. I picked up my phone and FaceTimed Taylor. She picked up on the first ring and apologized for taking so long to come back to her computer. She had decided to make some popcorn to take with her upstairs. Frantically, I explained to her what we saw in her bedroom. After a few minutes of convincing her that I wasn't pranking her, Taylor panicked and woke up her parents, who called the police. When the police arrived, they checked her bedroom and the rest of the house, but no one could find the figure we saw over Zoom. To this day, we have no idea who the person was or how they even got into Taylor's house. I've been afraid to use Zoom ever since. A few years ago, Anna, one of my closest friends, went to Guatemala to study abroad for a few months. After they had been gone a while, I and the other 3 girls in our friend group started to miss her, and we decided to set up a Zoom call. We wanted to hear all about the adventures she had been having and how she was liking her trip so far. Anna was a bit homesick, so she jumped at the idea, and we decided to plan the Zoom for 8 p.m. the upcoming evening. I set the meeting and sent the Zoom code to each of my friends. When 8 rolled around, we all joined the call. Anna told us how nice the family was that was letting her stay in their home for her trip and mentioned how much better her Spanish was since she had gotten there. It had only been about 15 minutes into our Zoom call when someone we didn't know entered the call. Their video was turned off and their username was just a bunch of random letters and numbers. I asked my friends if they had shared the Zoom code with anyone else, but they all insisted they hadn't. We were all creeped out that some stranger was listening in on our conversation, so I demanded the unknown person to turn on their video and show themselves. After a few minutes of trying to get them to tell us their identity, I kicked them out of the call, assuming that it was just some weird technical error. My friends and I resumed our conversation, and after a few minutes, we completely forgot about the weird, unknown person. That was until 30 minutes later, when the same user popped up in our chat again. This time we were creeped out. I had kicked them out of the call. How did they possibly find their way back in? Anna suggested that we end the call and continue our conversation over text, but I was annoyed. This was our chance to catch up with our friend, and this weirdo was ruining it. Again, I demanded that they turn on their camera and show themselves, or I was going to end the video. No sooner had I finished the threat did I notice the user had shared their video. The camera quality wasn't clear, and at first, all we could see was a type of grayish haze. In the background, there was some creepy old music playing, like the kind that they have in scary movies. Every so often, we could hear a child's laughter. My voice was shaking, but as firm as I could muster, I asked the person who they were. Whatever had been draped over the computer was suddenly ripped away, and we saw a dark, windowless room. A few feet away from the camera was a horrifying sight. It was a girl tied to a chair. Her hands were bound by a rope around her back, and her ankles were tied together. Several layers of duct tape covered her mouth, preventing her from screaming. Her arms and legs were bruised, and her clothing appeared worn and tattered. The girl looked directly at the camera as if she was asking for help. She was struggling against her restraints, clearly trying to free herself. Each one of my friends and I gasped out loud in horror. My eyes were transfixed on the screen. Was this some kind of sick joke? Or was this a person in trouble that had been abducted and was being held against their will? My friends and I were silent for a few seconds as we tried to process what we were looking at. Just as quickly as the video appeared, it was gone, and the unknown person disappeared from the Zoom call. We all began speaking quickly to try to figure out what we just saw and what to do about it. We came to the conclusion that the only right answer would be to call the police. I dialed 911, and we were quickly put into touch with the authorities. We gave them all the information we had, and they assured us that they were going to attempt to track the IP address of the unknown person and figure out what was going on. Even after all this time, the case is still open, and we don't know if the girl was rescued. Last year, a family I knew from church asked me to babysit for their 6 children. They had recently moved to a new property out in the middle of the country. Their estate was large, including a massive home, a barn, and even some cows and chickens. My first time babysitting went smoothly, and they asked me if I would mind helping out again the next week. Before long, I was babysitting the children on a weekly basis. I grew close to the children and found myself looking forward to the weekly visits. One day, the mother of the children asked if I would be comfortable staying overnight. It was her and her husband's wedding anniversary, and they wanted a night to themselves to relax. They were planning on booking a hotel, renting a movie, and just having a casual night together, a couple of towns over. I agreed to babysit, happy to make a little extra pocket money. The day they were expecting me, I packed an overnight bag with a few changes of clothes, some toiletries, and of course my laptop. I headed over to the house that morning, equipped with a double espresso Starbucks. After a busy day of running around and entertaining the kids, I was eager to put them to bed and have a little bit of time to myself before I hit the sack. After tucking them in and making sure the kids were asleep, I finally collapsed on the couch around 10 p.m. I was feeling a little bit anxious about staying all night in the big house in the woods with no other adults around. I decided to go ahead and do a Zoom call with my 2 best friends, hoping some laughs and light conversation would put me at ease. I started the call and immediately felt less worried. We were chatting nonstop, each of us talking about how our day had gone. At my friend's request, I decided to do a little video tour of the downstairs of the house. I showed them the stunning art on the walls and the luxurious kitchen before making my way to the master bedroom. While I was on my way there, my friends both gasped, causing me to stop in my tracks. They both told me they had seen someone walking behind me before fading into the shadows. At first, I wasn't fazed. There were 6 kids in the house. One of them had probably just gotten out of bed and come downstairs. I headed upstairs, my Zoom call still going, to see which kid was missing from their bed. Much to my surprise, I discovered that each child was sleeping soundly. It was clear my friends weren't joking, so I locked myself in one of the kids' rooms and dialed 911. Police quickly arrived on the scene and did a complete sweep of the house. In the downstairs laundry room, they discovered a homeless man who was likely on something. The man had broken through the basement window and even had a knife in his possession. There is no telling what would have happened if my friends hadn't noticed the strange figure in the background of my Zoom video that night. What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you on Zoom? Drop a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, sleep tight.